Can I ask you about something you mentioned in terms of psychiatry when you were younger? Because I had a similar experience of reading Freud and Carl Jung and just those kind of popular psychiatry ideas, and that was a dream for me early on in high school to like I hope to understand the human mind by somehow psychiatry felt like the right discipline for that. Does that make you sad that psychiatry is not the mechanism by which you want to are able to explore the human mind? So for me, I was a little bit disillusioned because of how much prescription medication and biochemistry is involved in the discipline of psychiatry, as opposed to the dream of the Freud, like use the mechanisms of language to explore the human mind. So that was a little disappointing. And that's why I kind of went to computer science and thinking like maybe you can explore the human mind by trying to build the thing.
Yes, I wasn't exposed to the sort of the biomedical / pharmacological aspects of psychiatry at that point because I dropped out of that whole idea
the physics
of pre-med that I never even found out about that until much later. But you're absolutely right. That's so I was actually a member of the National Advisory Mental Health Council. That is to say, the board of scientists who advised the director of the National Institute of Mental Health. And that was around the year 2000. And in fact, at that time, the man who came in as the new director, I had been on this board for a year when he came in, said, okay, schizophrenia is a biological illness. It's a lot like cancer. We've made huge strides in curing cancer, and that's what we're going to do with schizophrenia. We're going to find the medications that are going to cure this disease, and we're not going to listen to anybody's grandmother anymore. And, good old behavioral psychology is not something we're going to support any further. And, he completely alienated me from the Institute and from all of its prior policies, which had been much more holistic, I think, really at some level. And basically, and the other people on the board were like psychiatrists, right? And very biological psychiatrists. It didn't pan out, right? That nothing has changed in our ability to help people with mental illness. So 20 years later, that particular path was a dead end, as far as I can tell.
Well, there's some aspect to, and sorry to romanticize the whole philosophical conversation about the human mind, but to me, psychiatrists for a time held the flag of we're the deep thinkers. In the same way that physicists are the deep thinkers about the nature of reality, psychiatrists are the deep thinkers about the nature of the human mind. And I think that flag has been taken from them and carried by people like you. It's like, it's more in the cognitive psychology, especially when you have a foot in the computational view of the world, because you can both build it, you can like intuit about the functioning of the mind by building little models and being able to say mathematical things, and then deploying those models, especially in computers, to say, does this actually work? They do little like experiments, and then some combination of neuroscience where you're starting to actually be able to observe, do certain experiments on human beings and observe how the brain is actually functioning. And there, using intuition, you can start being the philosopher. Like Richard Feynman is the philosopher. Cognitive psychologists can become the philosopher, and psychiatrists become much more like doctors. They're like very medical. They help people with medication, biochemistry, and so on. But they are no longer the book writers and the philosophers, which of course I admire. I admire the Richard Feynman ability to do great low level mathematics and physics and the high level philosophy.
Yeah, I think it was Fromm and Jung more than Freud that was sort of initially kind of like made me feel like, oh, this is really amazing and interesting, and I want to explore it further. I actually, when I got to college and I lost that thread, I found more of it in sociology and literature than I did in any place else. So I took quite a lot of both of those disciplines as an undergraduate. And, I was actually deeply ambivalent about the psychology because I was doing experiments after the initial flurry of interest in why people would occupy buildings during a insurrection and consider, be sort of like so overcommitted to their beliefs. But I ended up in the psychology laboratory running experiments on pigeons, and so I had these profound sort of like dissonance between, okay, the kinds of issues that would be explored when I was thinking about what I read about in modern British literature versus what I could study with my pigeons in the laboratory. That got resolved when I went to graduate school and I discovered cognitive psychology, and so for me that was the path out of this sort of like extremely sort of ambivalent divergence between the interest in the human condition and the desire to do, actual mechanistically oriented thinking about it. And I think we've come a long way in that regard, and that you're absolutely right that nowadays this is something that's accessible to people through the pathway in through computer science or the pathway in through neuroscience. You can get derailed in neuroscience down to the bottom of the system where you might find the cures of various conditions, but you don't get a chance to think about the higher level stuff. So it's in the systems and cognitive neuroscience and computational intelligence miasma up there at the top that I think these opportunities are richest right now. And so, yes, I am indeed blessed by having had the opportunity to fall into that space.